First up tonight, pro-democracy lawmakers Ao Nok-hin and Gary Fan have lost their Leshko seats today after the city's top court ruled they were unduly elected. The pair failed in their appeal against high court rulings in September. Those had also overturned the government's bans on other pro-democracy candidates, but now leaves the pan-Democrats with fewer seats in Leshko. The decision raises questions, too, about whether the pair's constituencies will be represented until the next Leshko elections in September. Ryan Chang has more.
It was a legal battle that cost the Pan-Dems 2 seats in Leshko, almost 10% of their representation in Hong Kong's highest lawmaking body. And the pro-establishment camp had nothing to do with it. The quarter-final appeal today quashed challenges from Ao Nok-hin and Gary Fan over election petitions from younger activists Agnes Chow and Emily Lau. In September, the High Court overturned an election officer's ban on them in the 2018 by-elections. That ban had seen Ao and Fan replace them as backup candidates. They're now lawmakers no longer. Ao's lawyer argued in court that if his client's seat was invalid, it would disenfranchise those who voted for him as a backup candidate to Chow. Chow's team today had agreed he was a backup, but also said her aim was to unseat him, despite being on the same side. Speaking to reporters after the ruling, Ao and Fan blamed the electoral system and said their constituents were the ones losing out.
The electoral institution in Hong Kong, what I have described as crazy, is because when you are trying to challenge the government's decision about disqualifying candidates, so that the only way for you to challenge the decision from returning officers is to use the election petition, which is the only objective of the election petition is to unseat the incumbent one.
What this now means is that 2 seats are vacant, and they could stay that way until September. That's when the current Leshko term ends. While the government has to hold a by-election, it usually takes 6 months, and Leshko rules say there can't be one 4 months before the end of term. So the ruling leaves the Pan-Dems with fewer than a third of seats in Leshko. That makes it even more difficult for them to veto motions by functional constituencies, which are dominated by the pro-establishment. Ryan Chang, VTV News.
Okay, let's get more reaction to this from the Democratic Party's former chairperson, Emily Lau, who joins me in the studio. Emily, what do you think? Will there be another by-election? And if so, do you think the government is capable of doing it?
Well, if they want to do it, I think they can do it, but it would be, of course, a big scrum because there is a Leshko election in September next year. So prior to that, they have to hold 2 by-elections on Hong Kong Island and New Territories East, and that's a big deal. But I think the message that must go out to your viewers and to the international community is that it's ridiculous for these returning officers to disqualify candidates just because of their political views. And then, as Ao Nok-hin said, the only way to challenge it is to go to court and to displace the elected member.
Why haven't the Pan-Dems coordinated this better with Agnes Chow and Emily Lau? I mean, it seems a bit like an own goal, don't you think?
No. They want to stand for election. There's nothing wrong with them. How do you coordinate? By asking them not to stand? No way. I think the system should be that people with different political views should be allowed to stand for election. And how can this administrative officer, a very low-ranking officer, decide that, oh, you are a candidate, you are disqualified? This is ridiculous. This is an international disgrace. And I think the administration must learn, because come September, or even with a by-election, they may disqualify more candidates. And this farce will go on, and we become an international laughingstock.
Well, I mean, the judge said today that the election petition is a serious legal procedure, right? And it's not a game. What do you comment on Agnes and Chow using it to challenge the government?
Of course they should. I think the whole of Hong Kong, many of us want to challenge the government. Why did you disqualify these candidates? On what grounds? Oh, because of your political views. I don't like them. That's why I chuck you out. All the probation ones, they have no problem. Isn't this ridiculous? This is not democratic election. So this is the message that must go out. The administration must learn. And they cannot just disqualify candidates like that. And now, whether they're going to have by-election just weeks before the general election, They said it's up to the Election Commission.
Well,
They will decide according to the law and the actual circumstances. Let's see what they're going to come up with.
Well, how do you think it's going to seriously affect the Pandem camp now?
I don't know. I guess if they really are going to hold by-elections, I think Mr. Au and Mr. Fan, they will stand again.
All right. Emily, thank you so much. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.